For 10 years, I lived in a dream I didn't know was a nightmare. Emma was everything I ever wanted. Sharp, elegant, the kind of woman who could silence a room by just walking into it. We met when we were 25. Married by 27. Built a home that looked like it came out of a magazine. Everyone said we were perfect. And Mark? My best friend since high school. My brother from another mother. He was the best man at my wedding, the godfather to my daughter, the one who'd been there through every success and every failure. But I didn't know I was the failure. It started with a forgotten phone. That's how most secrets start, isn't it? Emma left her phone on the kitchen counter one night. She was in the shower, humming some Taylor Swift song, completely unaware of the storm about to break. I wasn't snooping. I swear to God, I wasn't. A message flashed on the lock screen. Last night was dangerous. But perfect. Just like you. M. I stared at it. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A wrong message. A prank. Anything but what it looked like. But I knew that tone. I knew that M. My fingers moved before I could stop them, unlocking her phone with ease. I knew her password like I knew my own heartbeat. And there it was. A hidden folder in her gallery. Hundreds of photos. Hotel rooms. Dinners. Selfies. Him behind her. Her kissing his cheek. Her in a robe. Him shirtless. 10 years. I checked the timestamps. The earliest photo dated back to the summer after our first anniversary. The same weekend Mark helped us move into our new house. I was breaking my back hauling furniture while they were breaking vows. I sat in the dark kitchen for hours. The phone on the counter. The silence around me growing louder. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. Because if I screamed, I'd wake my daughter. And if I cried, I wouldn't stop. When Emma came downstairs, towel in her hair, that same gentle smile on her face, she kissed me and asked if I wanted tea. I looked into her eyes. And I said, yeah. Tea would be great. Because something inside me had changed. The man who used to love her died in that kitchen. What stood up from that chair was someone else. Someone quiet. Someone cold. Someone with a plan. That night, I didn't confront her. I watched her sleep instead. Peacefully. Blissfully unaware of the storm coming. And I made a decision. They thought they'd played me for a fool for 10 years. So I'd make sure their last dinner with me would be unforgettable. The next morning, I stood at the stove flipping pancakes, just like I always did on Sundays. Emma came downstairs in her robe, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, and poured herself coffee. I smiled back. But inside, I was somewhere else, lost in the images I saw the night before. Every touch. Every kiss. Every moment that was stolen from me without my knowing. I played my role well. Too well, maybe. My daughter giggled at the breakfast table. Emma laughed at some meme on her phone. The world kept spinning as if nothing had cracked beneath the surface. But it had. And I was going to use that crack to bury them both. Over the next few weeks, I became a different man, but not in a way anyone noticed. I was calmer. More helpful. I started planning family time more often. I told Emma I wanted to reconnect. 10 years of marriage, I said. Feels like we blinked and it's all flown by. She smiled like she meant it. You've been such a rock lately, she said one night. I feel like I'm falling in love with you all over again. I wanted to laugh. Or throw something. Or scream. But instead, I took her hand, kissed her knuckles, and said, so am I. I started texting Mark more too. I invited him over for drinks, asked him about work, joked about old times. He had no idea. He thought the guilt wasn't showing. But it was, in tiny, subtle ways. He avoided eye contact when I brought up anything about the past. He flinched when I joked about loyalty. And when I asked him, remember that summer when you helped us move in? He blinked twice too long before answering. Oh yeah. I was watching. 3 weeks later, I made my move. I planned a dinner party, just the three of us. Emma, I said, I want to cook. No takeout, no reservations. Just us. Like old times. She beamed. That sounds perfect. I messaged Mark. Brother, we haven't had a good sit down in forever. Come for dinner Friday? Just us three. I'll cook. He responded with a thumbs up and a wouldn't miss it. You will, I thought. You'll miss everything you once had by the end of that night. I spent the week preparing more than just a meal. I booked a hidden camera installation company. Paid extra for a rush job. Tiny devices tucked into bookshelves, vases, even the light fixture over the table. I created a folder on my computer labeled Memories. Inside, I saved everything I'd seen on Emma's phone. And more, after syncing her cloud. I bought wine. Expensive wine. The kind we save for anniversaries. I sharpened the knives. Cleaned every surface. Lit candles. Because this dinner? This wasn't just a goodbye. It was the beginning of the end. Friday came like a storm cloud. Everything was set. Table for three. Candles lit. Wine breathing. A soft jazz playlist hummed in the background, the same one we played the night before our wedding. Emma wore red. Of course she did. It was his favorite color on her. I knew that now. She looked stunning. And I hated that it still made my chest ache. Mark arrived right on time. He brought a bottle of scotch and a fake smile. I met him with a hug so tight, it probably confused him. Damn, man, he said, laughing. You okay? Never better. We sat. We drank. We laughed about high school, about how Emma once burned a whole batch of cookies trying to impress my mom. We looked like a magazine cover, the beautiful wife, the charming best friend, the devoted husband. No one saw the rot underneath. Dinner was roasted lamb, garlic mash, honey-glazed carrots. Mark complimented the seasoning. Emma said I'd outdone myself. I wanted it to be special, I said, refilling their glasses. 10 years of friendship. 10 years of love. That deserves something unforgettable. Emma reached over and touched my hand. I'm so glad you said that. Mark nodded. You guys are the real deal, man. I almost laughed. The real deal. I let the silence linger for just a beat too long. Then smiled. You know what I realized this week? I said, swirling the wine in my glass. The people closest to you, they're always the ones who can cut the deepest. Emma blinked. Mark tilted his head. But you forgive, I continued. Because love is stronger than betrayal, right? At least that's what they say. The room chilled. Emma shifted in her seat. Babe, are you okay? I leaned back. Funny thing. I found something on your phone the other night. Mark stiffened. Emma's face drained of color. Pictures, I said casually. Lots of them. You and him. Hotels. Dinners. A 10-year scrapbook of lies. Neither of them spoke. I reached under the table and pulled out the USB drive I'd taped to the underside. I held it up. Everything. Every message. Every photo. Every lie. I know it all. Emma covered her mouth. Mark whispered, bro. Don't call me that, I snapped. My voice cracked the calm like thunder. I stood. Walked over to the laptop. Inserted the USB. One click. And the slideshow began, photo after photo flickering across the big screen behind the table. Her in lingerie. Him on a hotel bed. Them at the cabin I built. Emma cried. Mark sat frozen, face pale. This isn't a dinner, I said, voice low. This is the first course. Friday came like a storm cloud. Everything was set. Table for 3. Candles lit. Wine breathing. A soft jazz playlist hummed in the background, the same one we played the night before our wedding. Emma wore red. Of course she did. It was his favorite color on her. I knew that now. She looked stunning. And I hated that it still made my chest ache. Mark arrived right on time. He brought a bottle of scotch and a fake smile. I met him with a hug so tight, it probably confused him. Damn, man, he said, laughing. You okay? Never better. We sat. We drank. We laughed about high school, about how Emma once burned a whole batch of cookies trying to impress my mom. We looked like a magazine cover, the beautiful wife, the charming best friend, the devoted husband. No one saw the rot underneath. Dinner was roasted lamb, garlic mash, honey-glazed carrots. Mark complimented the seasoning. Emma said I'd outdone myself. I wanted it to be special, I said, refilling their glasses. 10 years of friendship. 10 years of love. That deserves something unforgettable. Emma reached over and touched my hand. I'm so glad you said that. Mark nodded. You guys are the real deal, man. I almost laughed. The real deal. I let the silence linger for just a beat too long. Then smiled. You know what I realized this week? I said, swirling the wine in my glass. The people closest to you, they're always the ones who can cut the deepest. Emma blinked. Mark tilted his head. But you forgive, I continued. Because love is stronger than betrayal, right? At least that's what they say. The room chilled. Emma shifted in her seat. Babe, are you okay? I leaned back. Funny thing. I found something on your phone the other night. Mark stiffened. Emma's face drained of color. Pictures, I said casually. Lots of them. You and him. Hotels. Dinners. A 10-year scrapbook of lies. Neither of them spoke. I reached under the table and pulled out the USB drive I'd taped to the underside. I held it up. Everything. Every message. Every photo. Every lie. I know it all. Emma covered her mouth. Mark whispered, bro. Don't call me that, I snapped. My voice cracked the calm like thunder. I stood. Walked over to the laptop. Inserted the USB. One click. And the slideshow began, photo after photo flickering across the big screen behind the table. Her in lingerie. Him on a hotel bed. Them at the cabin I built. Emma cried. Mark sat frozen, face pale. This isn't a dinner, I said, voice low. This is the first course. The silence that followed the slideshow was thick, suffocating. Emma's hand shook as she reached for her wine glass, but it wasn't the wine she was after. It was something to steady her nerves. Mark sat frozen, like a deer in headlights. His eyes darted between me and Emma, but neither of us was looking at him. I watched Emma. The woman I thought I knew. The woman who swore to me, for better or for worse. And yet here she was, trembling before me, completely exposed, her betrayal laid out like an open wound. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. We can. I cut her off, voice sharp. Fix it? You think you can fix this? How do you fix 10 years of lies? Of you in his arms while I was at home, thinking everything was perfect? Mark opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. Save it, I said, turning to him. You've already said everything. The only thing left is for you to understand what happens when you betray the people who trust you. I stepped back, pacing, unable to contain the fury that had been bubbling inside me. For 10 years, I gave you both everything. My trust. My loyalty. My love. And this is how you repay me? Emma's face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached for me, but I pulled back. I wasn't that man anymore. She gasped, struggling for words. I never meant for it to hurt you, I swear. It just happened. I'm sorry. I love you. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. No. You loved him. That's who you've loved for all these years. Don't you dare try to make me believe this was some mistake. You made a choice. Mark's face twisted in guilt, but there was still a sliver of defiance in his eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, man. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I stepped toward him, leaning down so we were eye to eye. You don't get to apologize now. You already made your choice. And that was when the silence hit again. This time, it was a different kind of silence, the kind where everyone knows the inevitable is coming, but no one knows exactly how to face it. I moved to the table and pulled out a thick manila envelope from my jacket. It was thick with paperwork, contracts, and the final pieces of my plan. I slid the envelope across the table to Emma, who hesitated before reaching for it. Open it, I said softly. This is the next step in fixing everything. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope, the papers inside scattering across the table. She looked up at me, confused, as her eyes scanned the documents. What is this? I crossed my arms and leaned back in my chair, watching her closely. It's the divorce papers. I'm serving you the papers tonight. The room seemed to freeze. Emma's face turned pale, her eyes darting to Mark, who was now standing, his fists clenched at his sides. You can't. You can't do this. Oh, but I can, I said, my voice low and steady. The only thing you two get tonight is the truth. And after everything that's happened, the truth is simple, I'm done. Emma's tears fell freely now. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. We can talk. We can. But her words fell away when I turned to Mark. You've been sleeping with my wife for 10 years. Do you think I'm just going to let that slide? Do you think I'm going to let you walk away without consequences? Mark took a step forward. Bro, please. You don't understand. I held up my hand to silence him. You had your chance. And now I'm going to make sure you understand what happens when you betray someone who trusted you. This isn't just about Emma. It's about you, too. You'll never have the life you think you're going to have. He stared at me for a moment, realization creeping in, but it was too late. I stood, grabbed my phone, and dialed the number I had pre-programmed. The phone rang for only a second before I heard a voice on the other end. Hello? It's done, I said. Send the papers. There was a pause, and then the voice responded. Understood. I'll have them served immediately. I hung up, and the finality of it hit the room like a thunderclap. The air was thick with tension, the aftermath of betrayal, anger, and raw emotion hanging like a suffocating fog. I could hear Emma sobbing quietly, her voice breaking between gasps for air. Mark, still standing, looked as if he was waiting for some kind of miracle. But there would be no miracles here. Only consequences. The divorce papers were on the table, but the reality of it hadn't sunk in for either of them. They still thought they had time, still thought they could weasel their way out of this. I was done with that. You think this is the end, don't you? I asked, my voice low but steady. You think that because I'm letting you walk out tonight, I've forgiven you, or that I'm somehow weak? Emma's sobs grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her anymore. You don't understand, she cried, wiping her eyes. We didn't mean for any of this to happen. It just did. I love you. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I'd heard her say it too many times, and every time it was just another lie. Mark, on the other hand, looked at me with a mixture of shame and fear. Man, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I should have never. Enough, I cut him off, raising a hand. You've said enough. I could see him struggling with his words, but it didn't matter. Nothing he said could change what had happened. And that was when the doorbell rang. The sound was sharp and final. Emma's head snapped up, her eyes wide, as if she hadn't anticipated that the end would come this way. She looked at me, her expression pleading. "Who is that?" she asked, her voice trembling. I stood up slowly, looking down at the papers one last time. I didn't answer her. Instead, I walked to the door. When I opened it, there was a process server standing there, a stern expression on his face. Without a word, he handed me a thick envelope and turned to leave. I stepped back into the dining room, holding the envelope in my hands. Emma and Mark watched me as I placed it carefully on the table. "What is that?" Emma asked, her voice a mix of fear and disbelief. I slid the envelope toward her. "This is the last part of your little fairy tale." She hesitated, but something in her eyes told me she already knew. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside were more papers, papers that marked the end of everything. "Where are you going with this?" Mark asked, voice rising. I smiled coldly. "You've betrayed me for years. Do you really think you can walk away scot-free?" Emma's eyes widened as she read through the documents, her hands shaking. What are you doing?" These are my financial records." I've taken control of everything," I said quietly, watching her panic. "You're not getting a dime. The house, the investments, everything I built, it's mine." "And Mark?" "Don't think I'm letting you off easy, either." Mark's face blanched as he realized what I had done. You can't take everything." "I just did," I replied coldly. I could see both of them breaking. Emma had always been so used to getting her way. Mark had never faced any real consequences. But tonight, that changed. They were no longer in control. I walked over to the wine rack and poured myself another glass. I drank it slowly, savoring the moment. This was the beginning of their end, and there was no turning back now. Emma looked at me, defeated, her tears still flowing. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "Don't apologize," I said, cutting her off once again. "You've already done the damage." The room fell into a heavy silence, the kind that lingers long after the words have been said. I could hear the weight of everything hanging between us, the hurt, the betrayal, the years of deception. But then, something inside me shifted. Something I hadn't expected. I turned to Mark. "You're still my friend," I said, my voice lower now, not as angry, but with something else behind it. "Or at least you were." Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face was a mix of regret and resignation. But I wasn't going to let him off the hook. "You're both going to leave tonight," I said quietly. "And when you do, know that this is the last time you'll see me. This is the last time you'll get to pretend everything's fine. Because it's not. And it never will be again." Emma stood up then, stumbling toward me as if she wanted to say something more, but I didn't wait for her. I opened the door, motioning for them to leave. Mark, still speechless, grabbed his coat. Emma, still crying, looked back at me one last time, but I didn't meet her gaze. There was nothing left to say. I watched them walk out the door, the sound of their footsteps fading into the distance. And in that moment, I realized something important, something that had been clear all along, but I'd refused to see. I wasn't the one who had lost. They were. What would you do if the people you trusted the most betrayed you? Could you ever forgive them, or would you seek revenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.